Thank you so much, Claire, and thank you so much to the LifeArc team. I really just want to, let's give them a really big round of applause. I mean, this has been an incredible event. Their whole team has been working with mine for a few months. They are some of the really best people I've gotten the privilege to work with, and I just want to say thank you so much to their professionalism and for everything they do for this ecosystem. It's incredibly important, and as you've heard, it could not be more timely. My name is Reed Jobs. I am I'm the investor, but I'm really the managing partner of a firm called Yosemite, which is a venture capital firm in San Francisco. We are on one mission, which is to make cancer a non-lethal disease in our lifetime. We are a disease-focused investment firm, but we also run a philanthropy as well. And while we only focus on one disease, we work on every type of cancer. And as you all know, unfortunately, about 20% of cancers are classified as rare, which means the diagnoses in the US are extremely limited. And if you, though, aggregate that together, though, that is as much of a population as any major cancer, whether that's lung or breast. Unfortunately, the outcomes for these patients lag far behind where they do for much more common cancers, and that is something that we find at Yosemite totally unacceptable. So our structure as a venture firm is actually really novel. I invented something that is totally new and that the market hasn't seen before, and that is actually using philanthropy to de-risk science really early on and see whether or not we can actually incubate something. Now, as this is a translational summit, this is a perfect place for us to describe this because what we really are is an engine for optimizing and de-risking translation in scientific ecosystems as quickly as possible, because my entire mission in life is not to run a large firm. It's actually to really deliver for patients as quickly as possible. And we think that means revolutionary new therapies that are going to completely transform what outcomes are today. So to do that, we actually take 2.5% of the fund's assets under management every year, and we put it into a donor-advised fund. Many of you probably don't know this, but this is a nonprofit that exists in the US that allows us to direct a lot of work without being a nonprofit ourselves. We get to become the advisors to this, and it's something that we are able to then to help influence and direct. What this means is that this is about $10 million a year that Yosemite gives out in grants. Uniquely, we actually give it out in completely no strings attached, non-dilutive grants, very similar to the NIH. When we initially started this program, I was sort of wondering why, if we've invested so much in cancer research over the last 10 years, why has that not translated into commensurate outcomes? Well, as many of you know, in the United States, historically, funding was done based on people's prior success and really on seniority. But if you look historically, most great innovations happen in people's careers in the earlier parts in their careers. Now at Yosemite, what we decided to do was take people's CVs off the grants that they gave us. We didn't want to know whose grant we were looking at. We just wanted to judge it based on the ideas alone. What that has yielded is a pipeline of research that we funded, which has both been incredibly promotive incubation and has been at the cutting edge at its time for where it is at any field. One thing we take inspiration of is the GLP-1 story. Who here knows what GLP-1s are? I assume this is everyone, right? These are the best-selling drugs in the world. Do people know where they came from? What animal was the basis of GLP-1s? Sorry? I heard over here. Yes, exactly. The Gila monster. It's this lizard that lives in a desert in Arizona. How obscure, right? And it only eats once a year. And the reason it's able to do this is because in its saliva, it has basically a similar GLP-1. It's sort of a cousin of ours, but it has a much longer half-life. This is what was described by zoologists in the mid-'80s with no whisper of an idea for translation. And of course, now it's become the class of the largest best-selling drugs in the world. Well, we see something very similar happening actually in cancer, not so much discovering new ideas and new science from the natural world as much, but today we see the the cutting edge of ADCs, AI, vaccines, and cell therapy as being in a similar infancy, where right now the current standard of cares are actually being combined across all these different modalities and are yielding things that are really novel. I'm sure many of you saw the Revolution Medicines readout a few weeks ago that really transformed pancreatic cancer care. Now, while that's certainly not what any of us in the field want to see, we want to see it, mortality go to zero, not, go still be in the months. But having said that, this is one of the first times we're really able to drug RAS in pancreatic cancer models. This is a huge deal for cancer patients, and frankly, as a first generation of care of its class, is really promising for where that entire field is going to go. So bringing us back to Yosemite, what we really do is beyond giving grants out, we then of course are a venture firm. So we are there at the point of translation for whenever grants really are ready to be made into companies. My team has now a decade-long experience doing this, and the way that we're able to identify companies really early on is actually by eliminating a philanthropy team. Uniquely, we actually give grants out as investors. Part of this was something that we just developed kind of organically. In all honesty, this was something that I chose because I didn't want to have to build an entire administrative grants team. We wanted to actually have the investors be able to do both grants and investments at the same time. And to further that, we actually gave every investor a stipend of a few $100,000 to do one grant every year. And this could be something that was generative of a company, or it could be something that was just someone pursuing like the Gila monster example, where something that they just thought was a really interesting new idea and a new area of medicine. That model has actually yielded us, and we've used this as scouts, and we use also this to manage the grants we distribute. This system actually of using the investment team itself has yielded over a dozen opportunities of incubations that Yosemite has then translated into early companies. Now, a lot of these are just, you could call them science projects that we're now taking over and sort of monitoring and really just doing manufacturing work. But now many of these are actually scaled into large companies that Yosemite has actually helped create. So some of these are in the induced proximity space, as many of you know. Some of these are in the AI sector that we'll talk about, I'm sure, with Clare in a moment. And a lot of these are actually also in the epigenetic and gene editing delivery sectors. This is an area that, on a personal level, I believe is going to actually have some of the most important advancements in the next 10 years. One area that we've really seen being transformed is the area of gene editing delivery. I'm sure many of you saw an acquisition of Colonia a few weeks ago, which we think on the cell therapy space has actually really transformed and really raised the bar for what we need to do in the liquid tumor area. Moving into solid tumors now, we think is going to be the area that's going to have the most active development of companies, and it's one that Yosemite's actually been sort of foreseeing and has positioned ourselves to ideally be the leaders in. So we're really excited to, frankly, take Yosemite and continue scaling it as we get more and more and more research that we're able to incubate through our grants program, research then that we're able to translate in our early stage company program, and as we continue to scale as a firm, that is only going to be getting into further stage clinical trials. And I'm really happy to say that there's now some copycats of Yosemite. There are some firms that are in Parkinson's that have brought forward grants to really incubate in their strategies. There's firms down in infectious disease, which have brought forward a lot of philanthropy, again, to de-risk a lot of science in academia and in CROs. And this is an area that is not remotely unique to cancer. Any area of scientific translation can actually integrate these two, and I encourage you all to do so, all to encourage your partners to actually think about solving problems through commercialization, not just in academia. And actually having one team do that is, in my experience, the best way to make sure that excellence is maintained. So I'm really excited to talk to you about some of the companies that we're doing, and thank you so much for your attention.
Great, thank you very much. So fantastic introduction to what you're doing at Yosemite. Obviously, the area of oncology is deeply personal one to you. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that you actually worked in a lab when you were very young, 15 maybe?
Oh, yeah. How many of you worked in cancer lab or just in labs when you were in high school? I got started then. I got the bug really young. But then I also realized, oh my God, I'm a terrible researcher, like a menace. And actually worked in something called Lynch syndrome labs. This is a type of hereditary colon cancer, which is unfortunately quite rare and very aggressive. It's caused by something called microsatellite instability, which is just which is a form of hereditary mutation that's just incredibly voluminous. These patients unfortunately end up with millions of mutations and often need a sort of prophylactic colectomy by the time they're 40. It's a really unfortunate prognosis. And since I did, that was about 2010, 2011 when I started working on that. Since then, as many of you know, this has actually been one of the great success stories of immunotherapy, because that crazy microsatellite instability profile makes it a fantastic target, obviously for first generation ipilimumab and pembrolizumab. And those patients now live really changed lives. And it went from something that was this horror stalking families genetically to now being something that is an incredibly transformed outcome where those colectomies are no longer necessary. And that only happened in the last 15 years.
So you got the sort of hands-on experience in the labs and then thought, well, that's not for me, that one. I'll focus on, I think you were
If
in
I wanted to be
pre-med at some
successful,
point.
that was not the way to do it, yeah.
But you went into pre-med and then you took a diversion after that, I think.
Yeah, unfortunately, like I'm sure everyone here is here for a personal reason, right? I'm here because my dad passed away of cancer, and I really want to be the last generation that suffers from that. I was pre-med, of course. I needed a little bit of time away from cancer after he passed away. I returned after, I took a couple years just to, to think about life a bit and think about what I really wanted to do. And I realized that ultimately, working in oncology was what I had always felt in my heart was the biggest contribution I could make in the world. It's also one that I thought, given where the time frame of my life, was probably something that was going to have one of the biggest changes. And I could be a part of that, and it could mean the most to me personally. So that's what made a good career.
Yeah, I wanted to talk more later about the speed of change in oncology and some thoughts on that. But I'm really interested in what you were talking about in terms of the model with Yosemite, some parallels there to what we're doing at LifeArc. And I think one of the things that we're balancing is the strengths and weaknesses of both grant-giving funding and venture capital funding. Both of them are super important in science. And how you decide at what point things should be venture funded versus continue to be grant funded. Sometimes it just has to do with the quantum of the capital. But why set up a venture capital fund? Why do you think that's the best way that you could make that impact rather than running a big grant funding program or a charity, for example?
Venture capitalists, it's hard to think of them as very useful all the time. And, we can be honest, right?
There's a few in here which may or may not agree. Yeah.
They'd agree with me, and I'm sure they'd agree with me. But why I've chosen this career path is because I am actually really tool agnostic. I'm really outcomes oriented, as I know a lot of you are. And if I could be most effective in a charity, I would do that. But I don't believe I can be, because I actually want to be the single point where ideas can be funded through ideation, through actually clinical trials, and then brought into patients' hands as a single individual and as a single entity. And I actually believe that this is the best way that I can sort of do that, because there's no rule against us doing philanthropy. And we, as a venture firm, if we earn it, we can scale to meet that. Now, the way that we operate both is actually we need it to be really pure. So every investment we make, we have to underwrite to return our fund. Otherwise, that's not being a fiduciary. And on the flip side, though, every grant that we make, we get no strings attached, and we actually do pure philanthropy. And we do that because we actually think we need to earn, a deal, if there is a deal there, as the VC firm. And if that goes to our peers, that's because we did not perform well enough, not because anything else happened. And we also think that we should just be trying to make a partnership with with all the researchers, with the scientific founders, instead of trying to like cut them out of something, we actually want to continue with them. We want them as part of the company. We'd like them as CSOs or co-founders, or we want this to be a really long-term relationship instead of a more transactional one. So we actually think by supporting them early and also by asking them for their most ambitious kind of unsupported ideas, usually we get things that are much closer to translation and a lot more differentiated. And then that becomes a much longer multi-company relationship instead of just a one grant to, paper relationship.
Yeah, and that journey from grant funding to venture funding, most people have certain milestones in their mind when they look at, where venture steps in versus grants finish. Are you quite open about what you're thinking there, or do you want to see specific data sets before you'll step in as a venture investor?
No, we go really early. The one rule is we would never give a grant to a company. That would kind of violate that principle of separation, and that would be us underwriting a poor company. But no, we go incredibly early. We give people their first grants. We've given first grants in whole new areas of medicine.
Fantastic. And the fund itself, I believe you're focused on early detection, immunotherapy, and digital health, which is quite a wide remit of things. Do you have a view on like how you're going to balance a portfolio of investments across those spaces, or do you have certain areas where you're probably going to, on a capital basis, deploy more capital?
Oh boy. We actually try to be pretty clear-eyed about where we see the biggest opportunity set scientifically over the course of a fund life. So, for instance, right now, we're doing a huge amount in gene editing, in epigenetic editing, honestly, in degraders right now, in induced proximity. I know that's a big area that I'm sure people are going to talk about a lot today. It's one that we were quite early on in. We're still really interested in that. Radiopharmaceuticals as a sector, we still think has a lot more room to grow, and that there's going to be some really interesting assets there. That's one that we're really interested in, that we're actually doing quite a few incubations in currently. And of course, AI. So I live in San Francisco. It's been a really interesting transformation in terms of seeing the city kind of before and after that. And there's been a huge amount of interest in AI and bio. From my perspective, there's really kind of two branches of that. The first branch is what we look at in terms of AI optimizing hospital and clinical workflow. In the United States, the hospital system is pretty anachronistic and pretty decentralized. And it is incredibly ripe and overdue for a lot of consolidation and disruption on the clinical workflow side. And the other aspect of what we do, though, is drug development and drug discovery with AI. And there, it's an incredible accelerant. I know you want to talk about kind of speed and pace of change. We are witnessing AI replacing a lot of really menial work in labs right now and accelerating the development of chemistry, not in a way that's necessarily novel, but in a way that is just transforming the costs and timelines that historically we've had to deal with.
So speed is one thing, but novelty obviously is the other. Do you think that we are going to actually see novelty catching up to speed, in the sense that I think sometimes we wonder whether biology can be pushed and accelerated at the same pace as AI or software? And then some people believe that actually you can't push biology that fast. So in a way, speed is always going to go ahead of the novelty factor, if that makes sense. I don't know if you see that in your portfolios, whether you're looking at novel targets or whether you're actually focused on the use of AI as just doing things faster.
I think right now there are so many incredible ideas happening right now in terms of just novel target identification and novel approaches that AI is accelerating all of those. We haven't seen companies yet where AI is coming up with new ideas and new hypothesis generation. That would be incredible, and I'd love to see that one day. I have no idea when we're going to get there, and how good those would be necessarily. It could come up with a lot of weird ideas, but we really are expecting that it's going to accelerate a lot of identification. I mean, if you want to look at targets for vaccines, targets for new epitopes, of course that's going to happen, but that's still going to remain under, human direction for a long time.
Yeah, and if you think about the cohort of young people going into STEM in university studying, chemistry and biology, I think some of them worry about what is the job market going to look like when I graduate? Are we still going to need chemists? What's your view on that? Is AI going to make chemists more valuable or less valuable?
I think it's only making researchers more powerful. I mean, I remember when 10 years ago, people were saying, oh, don't be a radiologist anymore. That's not going to be necessary. And obviously that prediction seems a bit foolish right now. So I think if anything, radiologists are just more effective now. They're also more overworked. I think, unfortunately, the same may be true for a lot of scientists.
We're always going to need chemists.
Yeah, I think we're going to continue to be very overworked as a sector.
Yeah. And when you see companies, I mean, we all, in venture, we're always screening a lot of companies. What are some of the sort of red flags that you note when people say, oh, we're AI-enabled or we're tech-enabled biotech? And do you see patterns in these companies? Do you think, oh, not another one?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, look, being in Silicon Valley, I've seen a lot of hype cycles. And this one is a classic, if not the hypiest that we've ever seen. So, I mean, I think I was, maybe pitched about 300 companies last year, say.
Yeah.
And probably about 280 of them described themselves as an AI company.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that they necessarily were, but that's how they described themselves. So, yeah, I mean, there is a bit of a saturation there. And of course, everyone's going to use that tool in any way they can. Sometimes it's valuable. More often than not, it's not as valuable.
Yeah. So you're used to sort of spotting the ones that have actual novelty. There's something unique about them.
Seeing that many, you can suss out, who's using it for reasons that are really valuable and who's using it just to use it.
Yeah. And do you think what is the novelty factor with those companies, especially the ones that are sort of looking for novel targets? Is it patient samples, or what is it that you're looking for that you think, okay, that's different, they've got something different there?
Yeah, so one of the ways that we've sourced these, and this is sort of a way that we've sourced a lot of companies, is seeing how actually the researchers in top labs are using it. Mm-hmm. So when we started looking at AI as an asset class, we actually went to a lot of the best protein folding labs in the world. Obviously, University of Washington, MIT, Stanford. And this was an area that we were like, okay, obviously AI is going to be perfect for this. And let's see, let's not just speculate. Let's go actually visit the great researchers who are using this, see what they're using. Mm-hmm. And this was right when David Baker won the Nobel Prize. Obviously, Rosetta Fold was being used at the University of Washington a lot. And we, just went to visit there. We went on several tours. We were there for like a week in Washington, same in Stanford, same in MIT. And we realized, kind of just by osmosis, that all the postdocs were like using kind of the same tools across all these universities. And they weren't the ones that had been developed indigenously at these places by the professors. They were commercial ones that were being sold externally. And we're like, okay, obviously that's the company that we need to take a look at, because if that's kind of the state of the art for where the researchers are going, then that's going to be where pharma's obviously going to follow.
Yeah.
So if we can be earlier there, that's going to be a really good investment opportunity. Yeah. That was how we started finding them. So we actually try to see, who are the smartest people in the world, seeing as the most useful, and then optimizing that for them.
Yeah. And can you talk about any investments you've made that you feel kind of represent your thesis and the use of AI?
So one that has been reported that we've invested in is a company called Chai Discovery. Mm-hmm. This is a team that came out of OpenAI, and again, people who are in venture a lot, it's really one of the most central things, of course, is the team, and it's one of the most intangible aspects of the whole job. But when you see a team that's really working well together, you kind of can feel it, and I'm sure you all in your lives know what I'm talking about. And this was kind of one of those teams. They had started out in OpenAI, they've been spun out there, And they've been one of the first teams to really reproduce AlphaFold, which of course was Google's, really AI thing for protein folding. And we realized that this was a team that was going to get a lot of the best talent in the world from a lot of the AI companies. That was going to be one of the best moats that they were going to have. And they actually had a strategy of giving out their platform to a lot of academics and to a lot of people in industry, and then getting data back from those labs. They've really evolved since then, but that was something that they'd done, which was really a smart bootstrap to get a huge amount of data originally, and then to kind of grow their own proprietary algorithms.
Yeah, and a couple of years ago you invested?
Yeah, it was a couple years ago.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, we'll keep an eye on that. So what I want to do is take a few questions from the audience, and then I think have a few more minutes of chat. I think we've got some mic runners. Anyone with a question? Don't be shy, please. There must be somebody with a question.
I don't know questions.
I find it hard to believe. Oh, here we go. Can we do oh, sorry. I was going to go over here. Yeah. Sorry. Middle. Thanks.
Am I going first?
Yes.
Right. Thanks very much for a fantastic conversation this morning. So I've got two caps on here, one from an academic institute and one as a new startup company focused on antibody drug conjugates. I've just come back from a conference in the States, spoken to lots of people, especially companies, VCs. And I like this, the conversation you've had about new models. One of the things I think that perhaps there's a difference between investment in the UK and in the United States is a different way of looking at research. I think it's quite commonly known that you are better risk takers. I wondered whether you have some idea about how we can better fund early stage projects here, obviously through new models, but also in terms of seeing that we may have to be willing to lose our investment, because doing, for example, drug discovery is high risk, no matter what you do, especially in rare diseases where we have to understand a molecular mechanism, and then after that try to work out how to design the therapies. But what I find, especially with the new spin-out companies, lots of investors are really interesting, but they always want to see more data. Yeah. How do you get to that point of the data without investor being willing to take some risk? Because I think, as you said early on, there's actually a lot of good science here already. We just need the funding mechanism to support them, and then we can get quicker to the therapies. So a little bit about maybe the risk-taking. Is there anything you can advise us on how to do it here in the UK?
Sure. I've supported research in the UK for over a decade now, and you're totally right that the quality of research in the UK and Europe generally, in my view, is pretty, equivalent to the United States in terms of quality. You could probably get a few differences of different, specialists here and there, but, kind of writ large. And the translational and, biotech markets are really night and day. So why is that? What is going on? Well, in my honest opinion, and this is just one person, I think there's a few elements that are going on there. First of all, in my view, a lot of the problems are actually with the VCs here, and it's less with the researchers. And why I say that is because a lot of VCs here have kind of a national focus. And if you're based in the UK, you just see things here in the UK. If you're based in the Netherlands, maybe you just see things in the Netherlands. And there are a few firms now that are kind of looking, region-wide, but only now is that happening. And that is something that is far overdue, because integrating across all the universities of the US, just from a landscape of knowing what the heck is going on, that's one of the great superpowers of the NIH and of people like me, because I don't have to just focus on California or Massachusetts or Washington or Texas or something. I can be just, national. And that kind of scale is something that Europe really needs, is to think continentally and to think across all the research happening across all of Europe, what can you bring together? That's kind of thing number one. Second is there's a gap, in my opinion, of really good early stage management talent here. And that's something that actually in the good side is not unique to the life sciences, in my opinion. And what I mean by that is, in a lot of software companies, you have a founder CEO. My dad is kind of the most famous example of this, and there's a lot more. And that isn't the case in life science companies as much, because the founder is an academic who may or may not want to leave their post, but the CEO is usually a business person who's going to fundraise and is going to build a team. And in a lot of times, you actually don't want that to be the scientific founder, because that's kind of a waste of their time. Like, why would you want them running fundraising when they're one of the best scientists in the world doing whatever, what they're really good at? So from Yosemite's companies, we've actually had a lot of our best CEOs who aren't native to the life sciences. They might have come from, we've had people from the entertainment industry, from the insurance industry, from management consultant industries. And they can be incredibly good life science CEOs with a good division of labor, with really good assets. And that can actually be a fantastic way to divide up running a company. And while the scientific side in the UK, in my opinion, is really stellar, it's actually that managerial kind of entrepreneurial CEO who doesn't need to come from life sciences, who needs to be married with that person, and that's really where the gap is. So I would say there's actually more on the managerial side than the scientific side that's really lacking here. But that's just one person's opinion.
We've got a question in the back there, lady with her hand, black shirt. Okay.
Sorry, I have my office on my lap, so that's fine. Thank you so much, Sulu in King's College London. Now, one of the key challenges around these exciting precision therapeutics, as you know, is access for patients. What is Yosemite doing about downstream post-translational access so that the global reach is achieved? Thanks.
Yep, it's a super important question, and it's one that I think about a lot. So I think about two things. First of all, there are some diseases that we work in where mortality is so high that access is not something we think about enough. But when we're thinking about GBM, about PDAC, about really high mortality cancers, we have yet to achieve biological results that are satisfactory before we can even have a conversation about access. So in our view, we're upstream of access in a few cancers. That's not my desire, but that's just because we do not know how to halt them yet. And that is just, unfortunately, the state of play. There are many others, though, where we see cost as a key piece of innovation where Yosemite or any other firm can really plug in and actually optimize. So, great examples of this are, say, CAR T-cell therapy, where we see, in vivo integration as obviously the next best thing to do. Now, that's going to be huge for patients, for efficacy, and massively for cost. I mean, something that can actually do that in vivo is going to hugely have a different cost profile than something that you have to expand outside your body. So this is a really large area that we look at kind of across a lot of different areas. ADCs is another, I forget the ADC guy, but that's a hugely interesting area for us from a cost perspective as well. And whenever we can outperform in cost, we will. Unfortunately, for some indications, that's something that we're upstream of. And when we get to cost, it's something that we're going to focus on.
One more? Yeah. Yeah. Any? Why don't you guys pick, please, on the mics? Yeah.
I've got a mic.
Okay.
Building on that last question, so I'm an economist and I work with pre-spin-outs at universities and spin-outs, helping them think about the economics, that long stream. And my question is, your investment community, do you think, or how do you think about the change in the global industry policy that's coming with most favored nations and how that is changing the economics of our ecosystem? Is that something that we're all just that we should say it will pass? Or do you think we need to think about how that's going to change the economics? That may not be a fair question.
Well, it's definitely not a fair question.
Yeah.
But I'll take a stab at it. I'll be sporting. We actually think about that a lot. We talk about this a lot, probably more than is necessary. I have no idea what's going to happen, on the policy world. I'm not involved in that at all. So, I'm a political Martian. But we think that there are going to be some major changes to the reimbursement ecosystem worldwide. And we actually see this happening at a really weird time where we have therapies that are coming online that could be one-time therapies. You know, think about things that are, and maybe even outside of cancer, things that are, you know, competing now against statins that are, you know, say going after, say, PCSK9 that are one and done, you know, one-time gene or epigenetic therapies that might lower that. Well, how would you really, you know, amateurize that value if it's a one-time therapy? And, you know, that's going to be a really weird thing for, really a lot of global payer systems to have to deal with. Those types of questions are going to happen at the same time as MFN, and it's something that we think is going to really change the global landscape. I have no idea what the result of that is going to be. I'm not a policymaker, thank God. But in my perspective, the best we can do is just continue to outperform incumbents and try to drive down costs that way. But I think it's actually a really looming issue for our industry that I do not have an easy answer for. I wish I did.
Good question.
Let's do some more questions.
Yeah.
Yes,
So we're out of time, so I've got one last question for you.
What?
I know. Someone's going to give me the heave-ho in a minute. So we talked earlier about, you and I talked about speed and impatience. And you said something along the lines of, I've been running Yosemite for 2.5 years, and I haven't yet come up with a cure for something. And I said, well, that seems improbable in 2.5 years, but I can sense your impatience around your mission, what you're trying to do. You know, if you look forward in 10 years and everything's gone right, everything you've invested in has worked, everything's gone right.
Oh boy.
What's that going to mean for cancer patients?
Well, Yosemite's ambition is kind of written on its sleeve. So we really think that our lifetimes are going to see a transformation in cancer care. And, you know, sanguinely, we don't think that that is going to be, you know, like a vaccine for infectious disease. I hope I'm wrong about that, but that's not my base case. We think it's going to probably be more targeted therapies on an individual basis. That's more indication by indication. And we think that in 10 years, there's going to be some major indications that are completely transformed. And that's going to be through a combination of targeted therapy, solid tumor targeting, immunotherapy. And if I could get anything right in the next 10 years, it would be that. And it would probably be us looking at that being the lead first line for most solid tumors. And oh my gosh, if we could do that in vivo, that would be so fantastic. And then being able to do that for a person like that same day when they're in the hospital, that would kind of be something in 10 years that we would like to see.
Yeah. Great. Fantastic. Well,
So
we're all
you guys
behind
help me?
you on that. Thank you very much. Thank you for
All
joining
right.
us.
Thanks a lot.